voice to skull technology that actually has a patent. So you can actually go online and find out concrete information about voice to skull technology that is actually patented and does exist. But it's colloquially been called sometimes as voice of God tech. And the reason for this is the suggestion that it could be used in order to manipulate information that is perceived within the New Age community. And this is where things begin to get really problematic. Because now what we're talking about is the suggestion that deep state dark projects could be or could have some interest in spreading misinformation within the New Age community, whether it is to help to sow ridicule within the general population of information that comes out of the New Age community, or whether it is just to sow a certain amount of distrust within the community by, injecting lots of different strains of information that conflict with each other, thus confusing and muddying the waters. And this is, I think, where I think things have got very, very problematic within the New Age community over the past decades. So this, from my understanding, the New Age community is something that kind of came out of the counterculture and hippie community of the 50s and 60s, and grew in the 70s, and grew arms and legs after that, really. But it had some influences from New Thought from the turn of the 19th century, but there really wasn't all that much there. If you wanted to venture into some of the information that was coming out in the late 19th century, early part of the 20th century, then we're talking about forms of traditional spirituality that don't really bear any reasonable resemblance to what New Age is today. Before anyone absorbs too much information that comes from New Age, from any channeled information, from any source, including the most famous, most popular ones, I would really seriously consider looking into some of the more traditional spiritual sources that are available out there, that you can read up on a little bit and research on, and give yourself a little bit more of a grounding on the source information on some of the spiritual topics that are out there. It will just help you have a broader understanding, and it will help your perspective as you move forward, and it will help you to veer away from what could be misinformation that you've been being fed from, that's been coming from the New Age community for many decades now. And I think this has just become a very, very serious problem within the community, to the point where we really don't know what to believe. And the trouble with it is, of course, that there's no way of... it's like that old thing, it's philosophically impossible to prove a negative, so therefore it's impossible to prove that something didn't happen. This is why, for example, in criminal justice, usually in most modern democratic countries, the onus of proof is on the state, because you can only have a proof positive, because it's philosophically impossible to prove a negative. It's not because the state is being fair, it's just because it's impossible for you to prove you didn't do something, because you can't prove a negative. You can only prove a positive, so you can say, I couldn't have done it because I was over there, so therefore I wasn't in that place because I was in that place, so I couldn't have done it. But you're still proving a positive. You can't prove a negative. So it's impossible to prove that God doesn't exist, for example, as much as it's impossible for anyone to prove that he does. So this is why there's a lot of false arguments and a lot of false narratives floating around in terms of expectations of proof and evidence, because it's just not possible. So nothing that's out there in the New Age community is possible to either prove or disprove, is really what I'm coming from. Until a spaceship lands in in the front lawn of the White House or something like that, that old joke, we're not going to have absolute proof of anything, are we? then you think almost everything that any channeler has said in the last 30, 40, 50 years could be absolute mumbo jumbo. It could be some dude with a funny little satellite dish sitting outside a crazy van. A bit like the old caricature of a BBC, license detector van that we used to joke about 20 years ago that we imagined sitting at the end of the street checking whether or not we've got a TV license. We imagine these characters sitting inside a nondescript old van, and have got a little wee satellite dish in there, and they're beaming beams towards our heads and making us think things that we, and it just sounds absolutely crazy, doesn't it? And it's unbelievable to think that technology exists, and it just makes you wonder what else has happened in the world that could be being manipulated, and where people's minds could be being manipulated to make them carry out actions that they would never normally carry out, and those actions could then be attributed to something else, or be made, dare I say, political or politicized in some way. And so it just becomes very scary. And here's the thing. If the CIA / MK Ultra / DARPA or whoever have been using voice-to-skull tech in order to manipulate the New Age, movement for 40, 50 years, then what else have they been using that technology for, even up until recent times? And if they were able to use that kind of technology 40 years ago, even 30 years ago, even only 20 years ago, then with the past 20 years of technological advancements, what could they be doing with it now? And, you just have to look at the difference between a computer that in the 1960s would have filled a room, that you can now, the same amount of power is now in this. So you just have, it boggles the mind to think what, dark projects, within, secret parts of the government could actually be able to do now. Because, you understand that the actual technology that exists is going to always be at least 50 years ahead of what we know exists, and possibly the rest. So there could be beaming mind control information from a satellite dish at this point, for all we know. And what I'm going to end with is the principle of the lie, and how it is best told in a way that you will believe it. A lie is best told in a way that the target audience will believe it if it is dressed up in lots of truth. So what you do is you tell lots and lots and lots of truth, and you say a lot. So in the spiritual community, if you happen to be giving false channeled information, then you would give lots and lots of love and light information throughout lots and lots of love and light channeling, and you will lace in there little snippets of problem. Little snippets of the misinformation and the misdirection. And you would do that through, the medium of several different channels in different ways. And in that way, you muddy the waters. Now transpose that into real life and the way that, the world has been manipulated politically over the last couple of years. And I'll leave you to contemplate that one on your own.